Virtual tours, how to give an amazing experience. Virtual tours often lack a certain energy or connection that comes with in-person experiences. Guides tend to naturally be personable and energetic, which doesn't always translate through a live stream or a Zoom call. So when that very physical wall of computer screens and distance is put between the guides and the guest, it makes it very hard to do a lot of things that naturally comes to guides, like reading body language of guests or trying to figure out their energy and match it to the guest, if it's too high, if it's too low. So it kind of seems like suddenly everything you knew about being a spectacular guide is no longer totally relevant. And that can make it really hard to figure out how to adapt your tours or how to train a guide team to now do virtual tours. So in this article, I've put together a checklist of things to consider to pull off an engaging, memorable, and logistically smooth virtual tour. These are 5 things that you're going to want to consider. 1. Logistics. Lighting. Do some research and make sure you're lit up in a flattering way. Nothing kills a tour faster than sort of creepy, dark basement vibes. You can be creative with the lamps and windows you already have. Just test it out. Sound. You might be limited in terms of what microphones or headphones you have access to. I mean, in a pinch, regular iPhone headphones work fine, but you'll also need to think about exterior sound coming from the street or roommates, for example. Framing. So this is how you look in the screen, right? Do you feel better standing or sitting? Do you want to be farther away from the camera? Perhaps you have your camera propped up or someone will be filming you. Or do you want to be close to the screen so that you can read the comments and click through your slideshow? Also, what's behind you in the frame? Guests might be very easily distracted by the view out your window or the titles of the books on your bookshelf. And finally, props. Are you going to use physical props like a photograph or a map or something to show them? Where can you place them so that they're within your reach that you can grab and bring onto screen? Preparation. Being in the moment and improvising off the energy of a group doesn't work the same way through virtual events. This is a new space for most guides and for guests, so it's not as predictable, and you need to think of it as a new skill, which takes practice. So things you might want to test out ahead of time. Technical aspects, such as moving from your face to presentation slides if you're doing a screen share. Sound and lighting, you're going to want to test it out, film it, see how it looks, adjust it, film it again. Timing, you're going to want to keep virtual tours short and on time. If groups can get restless on a regular tour, imagine how much more restless they'll be sitting at home watching on a screen. Also, don't underestimate the power of a practice tour, even for virtual tours, even if you've been guiding for 20 plus years, because I'm guessing you haven't been doing virtual tours for 20 plus years. This is a new skill and it takes practice. Every single presentation that I personally give or workshop, I usually give to my mom. It helps me catch any remaining typos on the presentation, allows me time to hear myself, to play it back. I can time how long it takes. Very often I'll also realize something I'm saying is clunky or confusing. If nothing else, it kind of gives me that extra boost of confidence that I've gone above and beyond to prepare. Housekeeping. This is pointing out important information at the start of the tour, such as safety, logistics, where you'll be going, etc. It's all that sort of unexciting non-tour content that you kind of have to say, right? It is even more important on a virtual tour as guests are even less likely to be paying attention if they are at home. So as with any tour, you'll want to introduce yourself, give your credentials. Why are you the best guide ever for this tour? What are you passionate about that relates to this tour? And set expectations by telling guests what to expect throughout the experience. So specifically for virtual tours, you'll need to give them permission and explain how to interact. Can they ask questions as you go? Maybe you'll encourage them to interact with each other in some way. Maybe you want them to use the chat or you want them to unmute. It's very important to set that right at the beginning so guests know how to interact with your tour. And as with in-person tours, make sure to repeat these important logistics throughout the experience, because again, guests aren't always paying attention. Structure. This is an important one. Avoid the temptation to simply give a lecture or webinar, unless that is the format of what people have signed up for. This is a tour, so it should be more experiential by nature, right? And virtual tours need to be much tighter than in-person tours. So make sure your tour has a concise theme, a solid finish. I highly recommend scripting your virtual tour at least somewhat, even if it's bullet points, in order to keep the structure. You don't have to memorize it, but it will keep you on time, on topic, and result in a well thought out experience. Remember, a guide going on a tangent can be endearing in real life, but when you don't have the ability to read the body language of the guest through a computer screen, it's a very easy way to lose your audience. Extremely important is to consider how you want to structure any questions, as I've mentioned before. Will you be monitoring the chat or having people unmute so that they can talk? Will you have designated points during the tour when you'll ask people for their questions? There's no right answer. It is totally up to you in the tour, but know exactly how you want it to go so you can communicate that to your guests. And finally, guiding style. Now is a great time to evaluate your personal guiding style if you haven't already. Are you more of an educator, more of an entertainer? What is it that you're really passionate about? What is it that you bring to the table that no other guide does? Being aware of your tour guide style will be important to recognize so you can do any needed adapting while on camera. Because again, on camera is very different than in person. So for example, if you're a guide with a big personality and relies a lot on wit and jokes and tone of voice, it might be too big on a small screen. So in this case, you might want to frame your body, for example, where you're standing so people can see your body language and you can project without being too loud. Okay. It's going to be different for everyone, but you have to know what you do. Think about other things you typically do during your tour that you'll have to be creative to translate to work online. Another example, if you always connect guests with each other during the tour, how can you do that through the comment section? So that is logistics, preparation, housekeeping, tour structure, and your guiding style. And you can read the full article with all the details at tripkinetics.com.